another episode. If you want to try a quiz that I made, this one's at my a website that I made called builditblock.com/quiz.html. So there's no link to it to get there unless you go directly to this URL as of right now. So this is the solution to the quiz and also kind of the explanation to the quiz. So don't watch this video unless you've already taken the quiz, unless you don't think that for some reason you want to take the quiz. Maybe you don't understand the topics that well, but here we go. So what is an appropriate name for the type of the following value? So this is kind of a basic programming language idea. It's a test to see if you are just kind of aware of most primitive types of programming languages. So obviously the number 14, usually, if it was a double, it would have a period. It would be a decimal. So it would be like 14.0 or something like that. And it could be a string, but usually when we talk about strings from a code point of view, we put double quotes around them. And a character obviously would just be one character. So 14 should be clear that it's just an integer. But anyway, that's just sort of an easy question just to get you started. Function types are indicated with an arrow. The parameter type on the left and the return type on the right. So this is the input, and on the right is the output for each of these. What would be a type of function which accepts an integer as an argument and returns a character? So this one's also pretty easy. Int on the left, int character on the right. So usually the standard symbol for an integer is just int, and the standard symbol for a character is just char, C-H-A-R. That's how they do it in like Java and like in C and things like that. So it's not the parameter, it's an argument because it's an actual, the argument is referring to the actual thing being passed in, but you would say that an int is the parameter here. So I'm going to click that. Which of the following functions have the type int arrow int? So which of these take an int and return an int? Well, if you reverse a list, we're going to assume that this function here is code that does something with a list, and a list isn't really a primitive int, so it's not that one. Here we add 5 to something, so unless we're concatenating strings or something, I would say that this is the answer here. And of course, concatenate is usually something you do with strings, and of course this just looks like it returns a char, and it doesn't even do anything with x, so x could be anything, but it returns a char. So here we take an int, and then we return an int. So it's the second answer. 2 colon characters often indicate the type of an expression. Okay, so if you have something like 5.223, we would use 2 colons to say, hey, this type is a double. Which of the following expressions appears to have an incorrect type indication? So 8 : int sounds right. H : char sounds right. Hello world in quotes : int. Yeah, that's not an int. That's a string. If it was an int, it would be like 1 or 5 or 10. So, of course, this last one looks like it's a double. So it's the third answer here, C. A function's domain must match its argument. Which of these expressions is well typed for the following functions? So f has type string arrow int, and g has type int arrow string. So this means that we can actually take g and put it in f. So you can have f of g because g gives you back a string, and then f can accept a string. So you can have an f of g in here, but you can't have a g of, you can have a g of f because g returns, takes an int and f returns a string. So both of these might work, except f takes a string, and here f takes an int. So this can't be right. So this is right because f can take a string, but then I would say it's this one. Oh, this is the only right one. That's what it is. Yep, f of g of 5. Okay, a type of an expression can be checked without the information about the function. Okay, so we take all these. F of b is not valid because, look, or it is valid. F of a is not valid because you cannot take f of an int. So which other example is not valid? Okay, so we got to find the one that's not valid here. So g of a, that seems valid. Okay, g of f of b seems valid. F of g of f of a, that's not valid because a is an int and f is a string. So this inner one right here can't be valid because you can't have f of a. See, f of a is not valid, so that one's not valid. The expressions and functions do not need to be named to check their types. For example, given f of int arrow int and a of int, one can check the type with simply int arrow int int. So int arrow int applied to int. Which of the following expressions are valid? Okay, so when you're applying a function to another type, you want to make sure that this thing on here on the right matches the thing on the left side of the arrow. So here we have an int, and here we have an int, but none of the other answers match. See, this string does not match the double. So this is a function which takes an int and returns a double, and you're applying it to an int, which is valid because this takes an int as input. So we're going to select that one. Oh, surprise physics question. John noticed that it costs energy to pump water upstairs from downstairs in the piping. He carries the water container downstairs after pumping it full. Where did the energy from pumping it go? Okay, so he pumps water up, he fills up a container, and he carries it downstairs. But he walked downstairs, so the water's lower, has less potential energy now because it moved downward. So obviously energy is conserved. We know that. We have to remember that from physics. Energy doesn't just disappear. So we can't answer, we have to explain that somehow. And the explanation is, as he walked down the stairs, he slowed the water. He sort of absorbed the energy and it converted to heat in his legs. So that's the answer to that one. Functions can accept other functions as arguments or return them. Okay, so which of the following appear to be well typed for f? So we want something that takes a function, int arrow int as input, and it returns a string arrow string as output. Okay, and the answer is, I think this one. Nope. Y return meh. I think this one, because this takes a y and it returns a string. If x is greater than 1,000, concatenate. Yeah, this one takes an int x and it returns a function, or it takes... Oh, I got it wrong! I can't even take my own quiz! I need to extend the time for these, because I clicked that right at 60 seconds. We'll go back to that one in a... No, let's go back to it now. Let's go back to it now. Let's go back to it now. So... f of... I gotta get all these right now. I need to extend the time for some of these if I can't even take it myself. I was thinking that 60 seconds was really short for some of these for these more complicated ones. F of B Okay. Okay, so for this one, we need to take an int arrow int as input and return a string arrow string. Let's see. The return increment function would have the following syntax in this question. Return x arrow, x plus 1. Yeah, this is too much to put in 60 seconds. I think it's this one. Because x, it doesn't need to be used, and this returns a function which takes a string and returns a string, or it takes something and returns a string. So therefore, the only thing we really need to make sure is that whatever the function we're returning returns a string. So it's this last one. Okay. Which of the following function type signatures are not valid? Remember, int arrow string applied to int is a function which accepts an int applied to an int, and it is a valid type expression. So let's see here. Which of the following function type signatures are not valid? Ooh, I remember making this one. Okay, so Boolean to Boolean, string to Boolean, applied to string. Is it this one? No! 60 seconds is not... Okay, so I have to extend the time. If I can't take it myself, we'll just select all the top ones. Okay, so if I can't take it myself in 60 seconds, which is true for the last 2 problems, then I have to extend the time for you guys. Let's see here. Which of the following... I'm glad that I'm taking this after a while, after I have had some time to not think about the quiz, so that I know... I kind of can get a clue of how difficult the quiz is. And I think I had my sister take it or someone and say that the time was a little short. So, let's see here. Int arrow string. So we know it's not this one. An int applied to this will give us a Boolean. And then a Boolean applied to an int applied to a Boolean will give us an int. And then we're applying an int to a Boolean, which an int isn't a function, so I think it's that one. Yeah. So notice that this last dot is green. So that means that whatever I clicked here, it's the correct answer. And it's correct because this first expression evaluates to an int, but an int is not a function. It's just an int. And so you can't apply it to whatever the second part of this is, which would be a Boolean. So that's why you can't. That's why this second one is not valid. All these other ones will be valid. So whatever my guess here was, guessing that this one was wrong last time, it actually was correct. I just was running out of time and I guessed this one. But if you look carefully, this one is the correct answer. So there you go. You have the solutions to the quiz, and apparently I only get 40% on my own quiz that I designed myself. So this was Tim, and it was fun making another video for you guys, and I will see you guys later.